NWSS Farewell Committee, NewWestTV and their partners in this production recognize and acknowledge the Kakite First Nation and Coast Salish nations on whose traditional and unceded territories the schools were built. Westminster Secondary School, circa 1949 to 2020, is a place full of memories for generations of students, over 50,000 of them. There were hundreds of teachers over the years. Many gave their all. And then there was a myriad of staff behind the scenes who helped smooth the process of education. There were fun times. There were times of celebration. There were times of challenge and accomplishment. There was learning and more learning. And friendships, the best memories of all.
Hi everyone. I'm Tracy Cave. Today we say goodbye to the old Nwss Secondary School.
The school's destruction is a complicated business. It's still in progress, and it may take many months before it's stripped down to its foundations.
The 70-year-old building holds the memories of thousands of students and hundreds of staff and teachers. You'll meet some of them, hear their stories, and wander through the old building. Virtually, that is. I hope it will trigger good memories.
The school was big. It took over the better part of 4 city blocks, from 8th Avenue to 10th Avenue, and from 6th Street to 8th Street. It was entirely a wood-framed building, the largest west of Winnipeg.
The school was actually overwhelming, the sheer size of it. As I said, we had to take a school bus from Queensborough to get there, and I remember the first day very clearly. We got there, and here's this gigantic school to get there, and there's a few thousand kids going to the school. It was pretty special and pretty surprising to us.
There were stairs and corridors galore. Imagine if you'd come to it from one of the smaller secondary schools, Duke of Connaught or T.J. Trapp Technical. Lynn Stevenson was one of them. She was in the first graduating class of 1956.
It was a little unnerving because of the fact that the other schools were so homey and very, very comfortable. The new schools seemed to be very uncomfortable for some of us because everything was so huge, where we had come from the schools that were quite a bit more close.
The new school was built to be a provincial showcase. The demise of the school was past due. It was seriously worn and outdated. It had lots of character, though. Thousands of students, hundreds of teachers and staff hold fond memories of their time there.
I've got a quiz. Sorry, once a teacher, always a teacher. The big reveal. Is there or is there not a swimming pool under the school?
So the pool, in fact, does not exist. Never existed.
So, who started the rumor?
I always told the kids we had a swimming pool underneath the Massey gym. I told that story about 1974, and kids in the 1990s, even 2000, because I taught most of their parents. Kids always said, "Is there a pool there?" And I always said, yes, there was. Now I can be truthful and say there was no pool under the Massey gym.
He's a rascal. How about the rumor that there are tunnels under the school? Sure enough, there are. They go from Massey Wing through to Lester Pearson Wing. Why are they there? They go to the boiler room, which heats both Massey and Pearson wings. You'll need tall rubber boots here. There has also been a rumor about a shooting range under the school. Seems far-fetched, but I checked it out. Yep, there was a shooting range for the New Westminster Gun Club, and later students used it for archery. What about ghosts? I know lots of you don't believe in them, but I've seen more than one.
Here's Tracy's story. At one time, the drama department was in a warehouse-like space. On this particular evening, Tracy's drama students had put on a play for friends, family, and the general public. It was a hit. As the last student made her way out of the studio space, Tracy retired to her office, which was adjacent to the studio. She was alone. She needed to count the box office intake. It was getting late. She was suddenly aware of a presence by her, a human presence. As she turned to look, she saw a woman just standing there. In what seemed like several minutes, but likely only a split second, Tracy realized that what she was seeing was not human. It was a ghost. She froze, and then hightailed it out of there. The next day, Tracy tentatively asked the custodians about the apparition. And they said, "Oh, we've seen her a few times. We wondered when you would run into her."
The first school on the property was New Westminster Junior High, built on the south side of the property. It was opened in 1949. It was renamed Vincent Massey later. The senior secondary school, Lester Pearson, opened in 1965. It was built on the north side of the property. In 1966, the two schools were amalgamated with the office area put in the middle. The Board of Education also had offices there, and the overpass that linked the buildings was also built. In the same year, 1966, the school was renamed New Westminster Secondary School. Many of us will remember certain areas of the school fondly. The Massey Theatre, which will not be destroyed, brings special memories.
Going into the Massey Theatre was such an amazing place for me. The red velvet, the curtains, it was a really top drawer for me. It was amazing.
So many random talent shows, events, plays. I would see plays in Massey Theatre, the art gallery.
Massey Theatre in particular has amazing bones on the inside. You know, some of the lumber is old growth, you know, single beam. They're just a remarkable structure.
Another favorite space, guests.
The overpass was a really big highlight for a lot of students.
The overpass.
The overpass probably was like, it was just a hangout.
There was no supervision there of any sort, so anything went.
Some of the mischievous things we got into, I guess, would be the grad prank.
Well, also just the whole hierarchy of it. Grade 8, you never go to the overpass because you're terrified of all the older kids.
Yeah.
For Walt Weaver, it was a particularly special place.
I used to sit on the register between the two schools, and of course, all the girls and guys would walk by there. And I found one young lady that I took a liking to, and we got married in '73, and we've been together for 48 years. So
Wow,
that's how I found her.
Particular classrooms of favorite subjects were remembered.
And there are other spaces that inspire fond memories.
The cafeteria.
Eating?
Well, I think they trained chefs there. I mean, you could take a course. I think often it was the students that were making the hamburgers and the stuff like that in both of the cafeterias. And boy, they made a great hamburger.
At least I used to walk into the cafeteria all the time. There was only one song playing at one particular point, and I remember it. It was War by Edwin Starr. Being from a Vancouver area school, we were quite into protest, anti-war, anti-Vietnam War. And
NWSS students are still involved in protests.
Yeah, you know what? Mr. Krause's little bee hive that he had. I remember I would get suited up in my full white suit for my biology 12 class, and he would take us up to the roof and we'd see all the bees. And
the library, because
even with my daughter, we went to some of the post-secondary fairs, and they were held in the library. And of course, I spent many years visiting that library when I went to school, whether I was researching or just a quiet place to go and work on things.
So when I wasn't in class, I would often be in the library reading encyclopedias. Even when I was skipping out, I would go to the library and read. How nerdy is that? I don't know.
We had little cubbies at the old school, which was really nice, like where you could just sit and eat your lunch.
You know, as artists, one of the things we examine is how space holds memories and stories, and how our environment kind of reflects back who we are and what we do. And we've been talking in our department about how maybe we can honor or kind of bring those stories from our old spaces into our new spaces. Maybe once COVID is over, we might create some sort of performance.
New Westminster Secondary School and sports. It's a big story. Over the school's lifespan, students had the option to participate in a wide variety of sports, quite beyond what is generally available at your average secondary school. This was in part because of the school's population, its catchment being the whole of the city. The numbers from year to year varied, but ranged from 2,000 to 3,000 plus. Sports opportunities were available for almost any interest, but of course it was the big team sports that got huge school and community support. They generated lots of enthusiasm and school spirit. The sports department of the school was excellent. There were good coaches and many talented and willing teachers who stepped up to push the students to do their best. The school teams and individual athletes won an outsized number of awards and championships, a great source of pride for all who attended.
Douglas Woodward was a coach and physical education teacher for 44 years at NWSS. He gives us a thumbnail history of sports at the school.
During the 70s, the big sport was, one of them was rugby. They had a great program. One of the better teams in the Vancouver District Championships. They didn't really have a provincial championship back then. Wrestling in the 70s was excellent. They won the provincial championships in the 70s. They had this Barry Callahan, later on this Dave Newland. Both teachers at our school were excellent coaches, and that carried on. Even our football program early was pretty good. Then we had to drop the program because there wasn't enough kids, because most of the kids played rugby. But later on in the 2000s, there, Farhan brought the team together. They started up football and got it going at a very high level. Well, in the last at least 10 years, they've been one of the top teams in the province. They won the championship. I'm not too sure what year it was, but I think it was about 3 years ago they won the provincials, and they've always been either in the semifinals. They've had, a good turnout of kids.
Here we go.
There it is. There's the snap.
Ball's up.
Phillip drops back, lobs
into the end zone,
and it's caught. It's caught. Hayek's touchdown. Are you kidding me?
Oh, and these New West fans going crazy. Oh, that's incredible. Kinsale Phillip with a phenomenal job getting hit.
Saba, the touchdown.
Just putting the ball up.
Lester Pearson High School started its first year with a bang. They had a powerhouse basketball team.
The Lester Pearson team of 1956 was a combination of the Duke of Connaught and Trap Tech teams. And Trap Tech had won the provincial championships the year before, 1955. And they joined up with Duke of Connaught and formed one of the very strongest teams in provincial high school history. In the 75-year history of the tournament, there was, which was last year, there was a contest that was held, and the Lester Pearson School was selected as one of the 4 best high school teams of all time. The provincial tournament was a 16-team tournament in those days, and they selected a first and a second all-star team. and the first all-star team was 5 players. So that 1956 Pearson team had 4 first all-stars on it: George Grozier, Don Crego, myself, and Dave McDonald. And that's the only team in history that ever had 4 provincial first all-stars playing on it.
The city had and still has a long-standing lacrosse club called the Salmon Bellies, which have been going on for over 100 years. Naturally, NWSS developed its own lacrosse program.
It was a great school to go to for lacrosse. They had a lot of support. A lot of kids played lacrosse, and most of the guys that I played with on the field team ended up playing either junior or senior lacrosse with later in life. I recall 1967, we won the regional championships, and we had some great players on the team. But of course, we all had lacrosse backgrounds, Salmon Belly backgrounds, all of us. We sort of dominated the league that we played in. I'm still involved actually with the game. I've taken over the junior program about 15 years ago, and I'm the governor president. We have a lot of local guys still involved with the organization. We actually have 3 teams in New Westminster, ages 16 all the way to 21. And we're quite proud of what we've done in the city.
Doug Woodward came to the school to coach football, but rugby took over for a time in the 1970s. So he coached boys basketball until a fateful trip to Japan, and after that, he coached girls basketball from then on.
When I went to Japan in 77, 79, I had an opportunity to do a basketball clinic there. And they asked me to do a clinic for the girls team at our sister school. And I walked in the gym, there were 50 girls on the team. They had a small gym, they had loud music on, and they were just different drills. They're just unbelievable. And they were one of the best teams in Japan. When we started an exchange program, we did that for about over 30 years. At New Westminster, the senior girls team was probably the most successful team. We've been in more provincial senior girl championship than any other team in the province.
The senior girls basketball team head to the provincials. Give a round of applause.
Over the years, many students became sports professionals. Justin Morneau, a superstar baseball player here, later played for a number of professional teams, including the Minnesota Twins. He sends his greetings.
Hey, New West, Justin Morneau here, class of 99. It's been a while since I graduated from there, but my memories are still right there with me. I remember so many great things about going to school at NW. I'm proud to come from New West, proud to go to the same high school that my dad went to. I remember going there as a kid and watching Bob Gare coach basketball and all the memories that started there. It seemed like such a big place, and then I finally got there, and it really helped shape my life and helped me get to where I am at today. So I'm thankful for all my time at New West. I remember playing basketball. I remember the pep rallies. I remember going through sports, intramurals at lunch. A lot of it revolves around playing sports and being part of teams there. Enjoyed my time there, but I'm thankful that I got to grow up around so many great people, and then they helped shape my life. And I'm thankful that I'm from New West and proud to be from New West.
Bill Ranford was an elite NHL goalie for 15 seasons on different teams, including Edmonton, Boston, Washington, Ottawa, Tampa Bay, and Detroit. When Bill played for the Edmonton Oilers, he won the Stanley Cup twice in the late 80s. As the goalie coach for the LA Kings, he was part of the Stanley Cup winners of 2012 and 2014. He still coaches there. Here's an excerpt of a note he sent. I was a student for 2 years at NW, from 1983 to 1985 while playing for the New Westminster Bruins. As a young 16-year-old, attending a new school was very intimidating for me and my teammates. Our introduction to the school at that time was through the vice principal of the time, Mr. Popowich. He was a big part of making us feel comfortable, so we hung out at his office for the first few weeks. Mr. Popowich finally asked us to move from the nest. This is when we moved to a table in the hallway outside the chemistry room. This would be our home away from home for our 2 years at NW. It would be a place where we spread our wings and became more a part of the school. Our fellow students came to recognize it as the Bruins table. Many people would stop by to say hello and talk hockey. The most significant memory for me is this is where I first saw my high school sweetheart, now my wife of 33 years.
Rugby was very popular at the school in the early 70s, bumping out football for a while.
Two players, Bill Bain and Howard Walton, wrote to us. I'll read what they had to say in part. What was this game called rugby, where it seemed you could be kicked, smacked, tackled, punched, cleated, and bitten, and love every minute of it? Rugby was very foreign to us entering high school. Surely NWSS wouldn't be very good at it. But thanks to the efforts of three teachers, Roger Phillips, Bill Smith, also known as Big Red, and Ray Wickland, rugby became one of the premier sports played at NWSS in the mid-70s. In 1975, NWSS played for the BC Championship, the New Zealand Shield at Brockton Oval, only to lose a very close match at 13-7. So, thanks to Roger, Bill, and Ray for exposing us to this barbaric game played by gentlemen and making us pretty damn good at it.
And then there are the arts at NW, especially the performing arts. The bands, including jazz bands, musicals, a staple in the community, drama. This is Midsummer Night's Dream. And dance.
Celebrity Charlotte Diamond was one of the early music teachers. She's seen here with the Right Honourable David Johnston, former Governor-General of Canada, when she was appointed to the Order of Canada.
I taught at the individual classroom level, beginning guitar and also choral. Then I formed the Nwss Minstrels, which was a group of singers, boys and girls both, and also with background instrumentalists. And we performed for the big concerts that were at NWSS. Having the opportunity to work on the musicals as a vocal director was a real stretch for me. I think musicals really get you to see the world in a broader sense. And you have to play that character. You have to get in character, wear a costume, change the way you move. I do love playing characters. Anybody who knows my music, we go looking for Dracula. I did play a part in Oliver. I was the widow Sourberry, who Oliver pushes into a coffin and her feet go up in the air. For me, that was a big stepping stone into my career as a children's musician.
4 hugs a day, that's the minimum. 4 hugs a day, not the maximum. Don't forget, you've got to give 4 hugs today. Yeah.
Her son Matt is accompanying her.
Jerry Kwan was a band instructor at the school for approximately 30 years. Much of that time, he was the band director. Bands played classical, orchestral, and pop. And then there were the jazz bands, which also had a diverse repertoire. The school trips were among some favorite experiences. For example, playing on the Queen Mary in Los Angeles. Disneyland was another place that they played. Their chaperones were Trekkies. Seeing the Mormon Tabernacle Choir in Salt Lake City, Utah was another highlight. He particularly enjoyed the musicals, especially Fiddler on the Roof and Oliver. At age 80, he's still playing. Check out the band sometime, Fat Jazz.
Kelly Prosnick is the current head of music in the performing arts. She and her department know well the importance of upholding the school's reputation in the arts.
We feel, all of us in the department feel a great responsibility to continue that good work. And the highlights for me have definitely been the colleagues that I've got to work with in my department. Creation of our musical theater program has been a really big highlight. They've been really successful. There isn't a day where I wake up and don't want to come do the work. It's just fun, challenging, heartwarming, inspiring, hopeful work.
This is a collage of the art that was painted on the school's walls. The school's fine arts department is also special.
Meet Lauren Brevner, who's a rising star in the art world. She specialized in fine arts when she was at NWSS. Her partner, James Harry, is also an exceptional artist and a fellow NWSS graduate. He learned Coast Salish carving and iconography from his father. His public art often uses materials other than wood, and they often collaborate on projects, particularly murals.
You will see their murals throughout Vancouver.
Like our murals specifically is more of like designed to be a button blanket, which is sort of like this idea of wrapping the city in like the fabrics of like our tradition and sort of like, yeah, the decolonizing of space.
As a multiracial person, Lauren grapples with her identity.
I've always struggled with my identity and feeling represented in popular culture. So I always like to paint women that have mixed features or that represent me in some way. I wouldn't say that I paint self-portraits, but I think that all portrait artists that I've talked to feel like their portraits have some sort of self-portrait aspect because you are putting some of yourself in there. And so I paint the woman that I want to be or the women that I see and am inspired by.
NWSS graduates have entered into almost every field imaginable, including the political realm.
Our current MLA and Minister of Education, Jennifer Whiteside, also went to NWSS, although she's not a graduate of the school. Policy making for schools during the times of COVID-19 was essential to her job. Chief Provincial Medical Officer Dr. Bonnie Henry looks on.
Coming up, greetings from MP Peter Julian, West Vancouver Mayor Marianne Booth, and Jerry Dobrovolny, Commissioner of Metro Vancouver.
Hi, I'm Peter Julian, Member of Parliament for New Westminster Burnaby.
Hi, I'm Marianne Booth, and I'm the Mayor of the District of West Vancouver and a proud graduate of NWSS Class of 1979.
I'm Jerry Dobrovolny, Commissioner at Metro Vancouver. Director Booth and the other mayors of the region are my bosses. So people from New Westminster have really succeeded in every field of human endeavor. When you think of arts and culture, you think of sports, business, labor, science, and even elected officials. They all come from NWSS, and I think it's because of that community feel. So I'd like to thank all of the staff and the teachers for NWSS that gave us such a terrific first step in our education.
Even though I'm the Mayor of West Vancouver, I always keep New Westminster close to my heart. I'm very proud of my beginnings in New Westminster and have really fond memories of being on student council. I was even a cheerleader, so I went to a lot of sports events. And I have a fond memory of Jerry being our valedictorian when we graduated in 1979. So it's a well-known school. It's a successful school, as Peter said, and I can't wait to see the new building.
You referenced our graduation. I was going to share a memory from that day, graduation, because as you said, I was the valedictorian. And I remember sitting in the Massey gym, 450 of us graduates to be, in our chairs, in rows, and I had my speech, and I was really nervous, and I was fumbling the pages, and I was getting ready. And if you remember, at the time, we had the New Westminster Bruins junior A hockey team. And a few of the players were in our grad class, and Boris Fistricht was the enforcer of the New West Bruins, and he was sitting directly behind me as we're getting ready for my speech. And I was really nervous, and I'm fumbling the pages, and Boris leaned forward, and I was hoping some words of encouragement. And what Boris said was, "Keep it short." And I went from nervous to terrified. Just want to wish everybody really well. One of the quotes from that speech was, "I'm indebted to my parents for living, but I'm indebted to my teachers for living well." And truly, we all mean that.
CBC reporter Belle Puri reminisces.
Belle Puri here, NWSS grad from, well, it seems like a lifetime ago, even though I still have my high school pin. The school changed to its new name about 2 or 3 years before I got there, and I'm sure lots of people have a story similar to this one. You would have one class in the deepest, darkest corner of Pearson Wing, and then English with Mr. Short in the deepest, darkest corner of Massey Wing. 2 blocks, 5 minutes, you're a little kid trying to navigate a sea of grade 11s and 12s and the infamous overpass. You come screaming around the corner, running for your life, because you're the only kid left in the hallway. Mr. Short is standing there, not to hold the door open for you, but to slam it shut just as you get there. And then he'd leave you in the hallway to stew for a few minutes until he decided to open the door and invite you in. I remember lunchtime in the Massey cafeteria and buying a glass of milk for 10 cents, French with Miss Houston, who of course is the incomparable Charlotte Diamond. There was the Canada-Russia hockey series, watching the big game perched on lab tables in Mr. Wickland's science class. There was band, basketball, the school paper, the yearbook, homecomings, campaigns for student council, and in grade 12, career exploration day, which pretty much put me on a path to becoming a journalist for decades and decades to come. NW helped us make lots and lots of memories. It would have been terrific to wander through your hallways one more time, but this just is not the year for that. Sorry to see you go. Cheers, old friend.
After working as a journalist for various New York media, NWSS grad Trevor Thompson got interested in public opinion polls. He's now a vice president of NORC, which is part of the University of Chicago. NORC, the National Public Opinion Research Center, is a premier institution for polling and analysis for corporations, media, and other organizations.
But I work for all the major media, New York Times, Fox News, Washington Post. We did a lot of COVID research too. Tried to make a contribution there too.
When he was at NWSS, he was involved in various social justice issues, including a funding initiative to build an elevator for students in wheelchairs. He reminisces about being student president.
That was a really great experience. My first experience at, trying to lead a team, and I learned very quickly how hard that is. The values of citizenship were really there. That's what I really like and enjoy about the work that I do now too, is that a lot of it is public service, kind of public impact kind of work, social impact kind of work. Yeah.
The school board chair for our district, SD40, is also a grad.
As much as school was fun, there were also parts where I feel like, hey, this would have been nice if I had in high school, perhaps like more mental health supports or better cultural supports for families. I decided to run for election in school board and try to foster that change from within to make life better for students in the future. We've made changes with, for example, anti-racism. We're working on that right now. We've done a special education review, which is really looking at, where can we improve to better support our students? Technology integrated into high school nowadays is so different. At NWSS, some of the robotics things that they do is really cool. And just how they do competitions with the little robots they make. And I think high school kind of taught me our differences, but the way that we experience life in the same places very differently. And I think that influenced some of the work that I did in university. And I'm a major in sociology with a minor in gender, race, sexuality, and social justice. That just kind of naturally projected into politics, really.
Football dominated Terry Johnston's life at school. Academics, not so much. Terry credits his coaches and teachers for helping him get a rich bursary to UBC.
The idea of going on to university for me was basically a non-starter until I got that award. I would not have been able to do that without getting the bursary, or for that matter, Ken Wright helping me after school by finding a job working for the Canada Summer Game.
After 2 years at the University of British Columbia, he seriously injured one of his legs. He had to make a 90-degree turn in his life.
And I started to apply myself to studies and realized that, in fact, if one applies themselves with the same discipline that sports taught me in high school, you can get through a lot of things. I got a bachelor's in arts geography major in Simon Fraser. And then, as I say, through discipline and recognizing one's potential, through the help of the people at high school, I went on and got my master's degree in planning. And that led me to a number of professional positions to where I was able to retire at 55.
Archie Miller, who's had an abiding interest in history since childhood, was not impressed by his history curriculum at high school. All kings and queens and rote learning about the world wars.
I aimed to deal with history a little different, and I guess a little differently. I guess I did that over the years.
At a young age, he got his dream job.
Lo and behold, I was city curator. So I was in charge of Irving House and the Westminster Museum. So I spent my time there from 1973 until 1999, when my second wife and I, my wife and I, we got into a business of our own. We got a contract with the city to supply information. So virtually all that aspect of my working life, I was in dealing with history. I was a historian, I was an archivist, I was a curator, I did programming, I did so many things. So
he also gave talks to NWSS students to give them a different slant on history.
I got to talk about the people who were there, the things that were in the community. I spent way more time talking about the things that were not as glorious as they were often portrayed to be. So I talked about Chinatown, I talked about the Japanese people here. We brought in the program, brought in lots of slides, did slide presentations, showed people what things look like, and got it so that there was an excitement for the things we were going to see, the things we were going to hear about, and it seemed to work very, very well.
Walt Weaver, an NWSS grad, now retired, became an extremely successful businessman with offices across the country. He gives his sports experiences at school and later a lot of credit for his success.
I got my start in business through lacrosse. One of my buddies in lacrosse, dad, was involved in the finance industry, and he told me, I should look at a career in the finance industry. So he gave me my first job at 18 years. Just as soon as I graduated, I started in the finance business, and I spent many, many years there before I started my own company in the 80s. So it's through sports, and sports does a lot for young people. And even today, I encourage guys to get involved with sports, and you never know where it can lead you. There's a lot about sports that is similar to business. You work in a team environment. You network with people. You support your team. You're there for you. It's not a single sport. It's a sport of a bunch of people. So in business, it's the same. If you're working in a company, you have a role to play, and you make sure everybody on your team is part of that organization stuff. So I think sports does a lot for people to teach them those things, and you learn to win and you learn to lose. And by doing that, it builds character, and it's not always winning. It's about dealing with tough times and trying to work your way through that, and working with people and communicating with people and stuff. So
he and his wife Judy are generous philanthropists. The next time you are at Royal Columbian Hospital with your child, you can thank them as they provided an exceptional donation to the pediatric department.
Yeah, we're very passionate about working with in the community and stuff.
And so have NWSS students given back to the community in many ways through the years.
Ed Moore credits one of his teachers for planting a seed in his head that ultimately led to a successful career.
You know, I wasn't involved in too many things at the school because I was painfully shy, and probably that's why I got into broadcasting, and then I got into journalism, and I was 12 years as a broadcaster, traveled all over the place in British Columbia, and I got into journalism, and I worked at the Edson Leader for 30 plus years. I wrote for the school newspaper a couple of years, and Mr. Johnston, who was a Australian teacher at the time, he was the head of the journalism class, and he said to me one day, Ed, you'd be great if you got into newspapers. And I didn't give it much thought at the time. I'll remember Mr. Johnston to this day for the advice he gave me.
A sunny day plying the waters of the Fraser River on a boat can sometimes do wonders in more ways than you can imagine.
They just started having career days, like try out something you want. And we had to pick somewhere to go. And my friend, he said, I'm going to call the Port Authority and go out on the patrol boat. And I thought, shit, let's both do that. And so I did that. And Dawn and I went out and we had a great day on a tug. We went up to Barnston and sounded a scow and came back, and diesel smell and fresh air and seagulls. This is pretty good.
Alan subsequently had many summer jobs with the Port Authority. While working toward a degree in industrial education at UBC, he was offered a full-time job with the Port Authority. That caused an abrupt right turn in his plans.
Maybe I don't want to be a teacher. Maybe I want to be a sailor. The long and short of that is, 30 years later, I was the CEO of the Port Authority, and I had an amazing time traveling Canada and the world. And it started from a high school trip on a patrol boat on a June afternoon.
While Rosemary Draper became an educational assistant, her husband, who was enamored with cars, took an expected path.
Well, as a teenager, I had lots of cars, but the one that I think probably most people would have remembered in high school, I had a red 66 Ford Fairlane, and managed to get enough tickets in a short period of time that I lost my license for a couple of months, and learned the value of not losing my license and having a good pair of shoes. As I said, the 70s were a wonderful time to have cars. They had 69 Chevelles and all the sort of muscle cars of that era, and everybody seemed to have one. And we're always doing things with the cars we shouldn't have done, but we're still here. Well, it was the 70s. It was a fun time to be a teenager. Well, when I went to school, I obviously started in 1970 in high school, and they had basically two programs. You were either on the university program or you were on the industrial program, which was things like woodworking and automotive subjects. So that's kind of the ones I spent most of my time with, is Mr. Wilkinson in the auto shop. And I had Mr. Wright, who was in the woodworking, which I did grade 12 with him. So when I graduated, I got into the automotive things. I worked at a few dealerships, was a mechanic there, and then became service writers and assistant managers, and eventually went on to ICBC for 30 years and retired from there about 5 years ago. So
he also was a night instructor at NWSS for 20 plus years. Automobiles were the subject, of course.
I just really enjoyed their enthusiasm for learning and wanting to get as much out of the class as they could.
Lynn Stevenson, who was in the first grad class of 1956, opted for a secretarial role. Not uncommon when women were discouraged from most careers.
Then I got a job on Nwss Island, worked for the Vice President of Lang Construction. It was interesting to develop Nwss Island. It was much smaller, of course, then than it is now, but it has a long history.
I take it as a compliment to the teachers of NWSS that many students became teachers too. Nikki Jeffers became a home economics teacher.
and started teaching in Vancouver in 1980 and was a teacher for 20 years. And I became very involved in my teaching with grad committee and a lot of fun nights and things that made school fun for the people I was teaching, and just loved it. That was a highlight of my life, was just being a teacher.
I always liked kids, and I always wanted to teach for some reason. I guess I only had 3 choices in my head as far as what I was going to do later. I had lots of opportunities for using creativity or getting other ways of teaching, and that was library. I specialized in school librarianship, and later on I went back for a degree in counseling. So then I ended up counseling.
Many teachers and coaches had a positive influence on their students, as you'll hear. First up is Ken Winslade. He talks about the coaches who were behind their winning basketball team of 1956.
Rudy Wiley had coached Trap Tech the year before. And so by winning in 1956, he won 2 provincial championships in a row. The team had 2 assistant coaches who I should mention who were teachers at the school. One was Bill Popowich, who eventually became the principal of the school many years later. And another was Bill Kushner, who actually was the football coach, started football at the high school.
I had a math teacher that was the most wonderful person in the world, Dr. Manati.
I got to do some things in music in the chorus was affiliated with the band. And so there was this Miss Lounsborough. She was really, really good. Doug Price was excellent in terms of sports. Bill Popowich, who coached soccer, Ken Swalwell.
Well, I enjoyed most of the subjects because of how the teachers taught it. And we had some really good teachers. Had a great science teacher, Mr. Popowich. He was also the sports team or coordinator and whatever. He taught us how to really think factually and get the methods properly and record everything. Very, very particular about how we recorded things. And then I had Sam Rodden, an English teacher who spoke a lot about, he connected the literature we were learning about to life and had his own way of telling stories, and he was a writer.
One of the things that was a favorite of mine was French with Mrs. Lounsborough and Mr. Lise and Mrs. Diamond. I think because it was such a friendly atmosphere in the French classes.
Mademoiselle, voulez-vous danser? La bastringue, mademoiselle, voulez-vous danser? La bastringue va commencer. I found when I introduced songs that the kids came along so well with their pronunciation.
Yeah, Mr. Liebman was a great teacher. Quirky as they come, I'd say. I guess Liebman exuded the idea of what you thought an artist would be. He would always paint in the classroom, so he'd always be working on a massive canvas on his own work, and he kind of was the type of teacher that would lead by example. He wasn't going to sit there and teach you a specific technique, so being around that creative energy was, I think, invaluable, and it left an impact on me.
I had an amazing teacher, and that kind of did it for me. Grade 10 stands out. Mr. Demert, the probably most feared math teacher in the entire high school, knew how to teach geometry like it was magic.
I really loved my guidance counselor, Mrs. Hess. She had a girls group called Capital Lambda, and she was just a great teacher and a great person.
That I was mainly in sciences, to go on to a Bachelor of Science at UBC. And I really quite enjoyed Mr. Millett for physics and Mr. Siemens in physics.
Some of the teachers really stand out to me as being very positive and helping to instill discipline so one could go further in life. And some of those were, like people like Callahan and Bratchek, Swalwell, West Hall contributed and helped me along the way to get going. And
Kiko Hirakawa was an international student from Japan at NWSS in 2015. Her dream was to become an international runway model, so she came to Canada to improve her English. She liked school life at NWSS. She made many friends and met students from all over the world. However, she suffered an eating disorder early in her modeling career, a hazard of that profession. Her school counselor, Mayanne Yip, recognized her illness and sought the medical help she needed to put Kiko on the path to success. Today, she's an eco model based in Paris and Berlin. She models for ethical and sustainable brands to make the world, in her words, a better place.
I look back now and I think of the teachers as characters. We had a lot of fun with them, and we certainly played some practical jokes on them. And I'm sure that anybody that watches this presentation that you're putting together, they've all got memories of teachers there that they've had that they look back and they laugh at some of the things that happened in school. But we had a lot of good teachers there, and I also remember how tough the physical ed teachers were. Ken Swalwell, he was just a tough fella. If he wanted you to do something, you didn't do it, you'd have to give push-ups until you couldn't lift yourself anymore, or sit-ups, or run the track, and some of those things. At the time, you thought it was mean, but really it was part of growing up and learning that and you had to take instructions and do your best at all times.
And then in grade 11, I had Mr. Smith, not Skyball Smith, the other Smith, for social studies. To sit there and listen to him recite the textbook from memory. We never read the textbook. He would just go on off the top of his head, and it made Canadian history just come alive.
I have to also give credit to the shop teachers that were there. The shop teachers are the ones that actually gave me the skills, both in woodworking and metalwork, to do a lot of things around the house and in life.
And then I remember Mr. Wright, who was a woodworking teacher at the time, and I think he was pretty instrumental in the way I turned out as well, because he was a very, very caring teacher, very strict, but he taught me a lot of life lessons, and I was probably the slowest woodworker in the class. It would take other kids maybe 2 months to put something together. It would take me 4, but I think he appreciated the fact that I took my time, and I was very, very careful on what I crafted.
The subject that I gravitated to most was biology, and I really excelled at that, and I really had a great teacher. I believe her name was Miss McDonald.
We had a lot of teachers that put a lot of hard work into connecting with the kids and making sure that everything was going well for them.
Some teachers and students talk about the highlights of their time at the school.
When I started at NewWest Secondary, we did May Day and the May Day Parade. And we're not a marching band school. That's a real specialized form of music performance. Some of my best memories when I first started working here were going out to the field and practicing marching. Me and my colleague Steve Clement, and Mr. Clements is quite a sense of humor, and he would be yelling out commands to the students, and we just make up marching band commands, and it was very, very fun and funny, and the students loved it.
We had a pep band. It's a small band. We were all brass and a bass drum. I was the bass drum, and you're making things a little bit exciting to try to encourage the audience to get excited and to support your team that's on the floor or what they're doing. So to get the crowd interested so that they're clapping along. We were called the Crunchy Birds. We wore these funny vests that had on the back. We had this. Somebody had cut out a bunch of pieces of material, and it looked like this really funny bird. Look at it. But it was good. It was exciting. It added to the school community, and we had a lot of fun doing it.
One thing I do remember, the sock hops, noon hour sock hops. The school dances were always really good. There was lots of clubs and stuff in the schools at the time.
And there still are lots of clubs, something for everyone.
Yeah, like the homecoming games, those were always super fun. Like the first like, just the football games in general where we get to play at the home fields. Assemblies, we had some super cool assemblies like before COVID in the old school when we do them in the gym, like the football ones. Like we'd get all the football players on there, or they'd get like their awards for like best player and stuff like that. I really like those. Those were a lot of fun. Lots of great memories with my friends. Two of my closest friends I met in high school in grade 9.
Of course, the 72 Canada Cup, the Canada-Russia series, was probably one of the premier things that happened in school. The intense fervor, TVs every third room, no one going to classes when the games were on, everybody huddling in and cheering wildly. It was a time of immense enthusiasm.
I still look back on my high school experience as a wonderful time in my life. I had so much fun. I still have a lot of friends from high school. Yeah, also we met in high school and now we're living and working together. So there's that too. The retreats during fine arts, they would go on these little retreats every year to Camp Elphinstone, I believe, on the Sunshine Coast. And that was always super fun.
I went to Spain in grade 12 with, Mr. Lehman. I think because the school was so large, I was able to I just met a lot of people. I think, there were a lot of house parties.
Yeah.
Those were fun times for me, actually.
I went to Japan for the first time with school, and then I loved it so much that I moved to Japan after. So I don't think if I had gone with the school, shout outs to Miss Shannon, who's my Japanese teacher, who she still takes me out for lunch every now and again. So yeah, I made some wonderful connections with teachers and relationships that we both still have.
Mm-hmm.
There are phenomenal memories, that's for sure. For Rochelle Holmes, being a super fan of boys basketball was her favorite part of being at school. She hitched a ride with the team to go wherever they were playing.
I'm a very heated fan, so sometimes, the coaches would need to tell me to tone it down a little bit. But no, it was always something that, they just more expected me to come because I had been going to all the games. In grade 11 there, they actually gave me one of their older jerseys that the school had. So I still have that in my closet somewhere. But those are my fondest memories of being with the basketball teams and rooting them on. And yeah, it was one of the funnest times of my life.
It was a highlight. I was a football queen in 1961-62. It was a big boot game between Coquitlam and Lester Pearson. That was a big occasion.
As a sports guy, Walt Weaver remembers their lacrosse championships, but the school offered another quality that he enjoyed and served him well.
We had such a diverse culture. I came from an area in Queensborough there. We're very ethnic in Queensborough, and I remember my lacrosse team, we had maybe 8 or 9 players. We had 8 or 9 different ethnicities on the team and stuff. So I learned a lot about people. And of course, when you went to the high school, we sort of all melted together. And so I just learned a lot of, of respecting other people and their cultures. And I remember having some East Indian dinners with friends that that you would have never had that opportunity if you weren't open to those things. But you never thought of it in that way. You just thought of them as people and friends, and that's how you taught them. And still to this day, I've got some very good friends that I made in school, and my best man at my wedding I met in school. A lot of my close friends I met in school, and so that gave me a lot. It was a great foundation. As much as you got the education, it was a great foundation for future things in life.
Others agreed with the positive assessment of such a rich melding of cultures.
It really was a great mixture of students. We very multicultural, as you can imagine, in New Westminster.
And that was everyone from New Westminster and Queensborough. So you have lots of different cultures, many different races.
And I would say that translated into a lot of acceptance as we got older. It was very enjoyable having a very mixed race, multicultural.
Really made an impact on who I became after high school, as well as definitely enriched my time while being at NWSS.
For Doug Woodward, it was all about the relationships.
I have a great network of kids that that I see all the time, because I got to know their parents really well, and a lot of times doing a lot of socializing with all the parents, and that's probably the best part, is that relationship I've had with all the different girl teams that I've had, as well as enjoy taking the basketball teams to Japan, because the different things you had to do, they had to, certain customs, you had to bow a lot, you had to bow to the referee if you got on the court. If you got off the court, you had to bow. They're the main things anyways. And
for some, the highlights at NWSS were their accomplishments.
They held a contest amongst the students to design a crest. I was in drafting at the time. I gave a go, and I came up with a design. It's basically a semicircle with a crown, which is the Royal City. It's got the anvil, which is represented a high axe, and it has a torch, again, representing the Royal City. And then it says Westminster Secondary School in the semicircle. At a suggestion of one of the teachers, I added some Latin word, ductum et opera, which means application and work. Just happened to notice not too long ago that they're still using it. So it's been in place for many years.
Many loved musical theater.
The creation of our musical theater program has been a really big highlight. The most recent show is Beauty and the Beast, which we ran last February, so February 2020, just before the pandemic really shut things down. And that show was the biggest one we've done, both from a budget perspective and just costumes and sets. The cast was massive. All of them have been fun. We've done Grease and Annie. We did Crazy for You, which is a lesser known musical, a lot of tap dancing. And we weren't really strong with that, so it was a challenge.
Oh, call the girls first thing in the morning. Hey, what's this?
I don't think there's a favorite. Like, every cast and every show is very different. It gives you challenges and rewards in a different way.
Many of those we interviewed expressed deep appreciation for the occupational subjects.
Every year, the senior class here built a house right from the floor up, framed everything and plumbed it and wired it. And so we learned all the trades. And then the house was auctioned off at the end of the year, but the money they received would be used to purchase the material for the next year. And they hoped that they made a little bit more each year so they could improve the quality. It wasn't much of a house, it was just a bungalow, one floor. And I think I also mentioned to you that still in use today on the property of the school is the storekeeper's hut, or the press box. And the senior year built that as a class project. And I think it's still the same structure that's there today. It certainly looks like it.
In the early days of the school, it seems right up until the 70s, there were private clubs.
They're like mini fraternities and sororities.
A group of us was a Letterman type group, which are frowned upon nowadays. And when we were in school, they had groups called sweater clubs. They got rid of the sweater clubs. I don't know exactly when, because they found they were too cliquey. If you weren't in the sweater club, you weren't one of the popular kids. We didn't do much of anything, to tell you the truth. But
I was the president of the Ventures Club for the last 2 years of my high school. And I recall we used to do some charity work for the orphanage. We were kind of the sweat hog group, but it was mostly party clubs. Yeah, absolutely.
We had a lot of fun, and I guess that was all it was all about. But some people felt left out if they weren't in a club, and I think it was maybe a good idea to get rid of them.
A defining feature of the Letterman or sweater clubs were the sweaters or jackets that members wore. They had the initials or name of the club sewn onto them.
No surprise, many from the school married their high school sweethearts. Rosemary and Larry first set eyes on each other one day while at the Woodward store.
And then that night, Larry picked me up later, and we went to McDonald's on Edmonds and had our first date. I was 16 at the time.
13 and 16, my goodness.
When I saw Larry in the automotive department of Woodward's, and we walked over there to talk to him, I don't know what it was all about, but I knew at that moment that I would marry Larry. And boy, was I dumb. I actually told somebody else. She just about laughed me off the face of the earth.
Of course, you know, when you're in high school, you don't go together every day steadily for all those years. We were apart for a little bit and never really thought far enough ahead that we'd get married, but we did, and I don't regret a single day of it.
Well, I graduated in 1977 and we got married in 78. So here we are, 42 years.
42 years of marriage coming up.
Yeah, it was the best decision I ever made.
The Champagne's love story began many years after graduating from NWSS.
I ended up in the same elementary school as our F.W. Howie in grade 3. And then we went to high school together for years, and we knew each other in high school. Yeah, we reconnected at our 30th reunion, 2006.
And then we just started texting. That's when texting started.
I proposed to you on
October 13th.
Yeah.
And we got married on the 13th. So everything that has to do with us has to do with, especially you, is number 13. And nothing was planned that way. And we just went from there.
We got married, I guess, 4 years later, right? And
we had a big wedding, our third time around, 150 people, and it was just...
That was a great night. Yeah. People still talk about it. And
the wedding party says it all. All of these women graduated together in 1976 and are still friends, as is the case with Jerry and his friends, who mostly graduated in the same year. New Westminster is a tight community.
And we're lucky. We're lucky to have each other. So we have a sign in our living room that says, "Never too late to live happily ever after."
In this tight-knit community, often several generations of one family have gone to NWSS. Meet the Ng family.
Well, yeah, we actually met in the summer of 1968, the year before I graduated. I was just going by his house one day and we just kind of, I don't know, met.
I think Lil was just looking for a ride to school every day.
Oh yeah, we started dating right in the summer of 68. The international student program, we were involved in it. I had hosted international students for 20 years.
We hosted probably 10 different international students, and it was a great school, I think, for international students.
Mm-hmm.
Our oldest two kids graduated from NWSS. Our youngest one decided she wanted to go to St. Thomas More.
Yeah, we currently have 2 grandkids going to the high school now, and one is grade 10, the other one is grade 12, graduating this year. And of course, they moved into the new school in January.
And we do have one more headed that way.
Sarah Conley, their eldest daughter, compares notes about her NWSS experience to those of her parents and children.
So I married my high school sweetheart, and it's kind of funny. I'm not sure if my parents told you, well, I'm sure they did, that they also met in high school, and they have had 3 kids, and I've had 3 kids. And we're still both in NewWest. It's been neat that we've got to all go to the same school. I feel like the kids have a similar experience to when I was there. There's just all different sorts of people going to school with you. I was involved with the band and the jazz band, so we got to perform in Massey Theatre, and I feel like that was a really great venue and pretty special time. I played basketball. Doug Woodward, he was my basketball coach, plus he was also my PE teacher, and he was also my daughter's PE teacher. I was in late French immersion, and we went to Paris, and that was definitely one of the highlights of high school for me.
Technology, to a great degree, separates the generations at school.
The technology from when I went to school versus when they are going to school is definitely quite different. I remember, I think I was probably 12 when we started with the dial-up internet, and you'd listen to those weird pinging noises and get connected, and screens were more used for computer programs when I went to school, whereas now you've got the world at your fingertips. I feel like my daughter is quite a motivated student, so she really enjoys learning, and I do think they offer some different classes that they didn't offer to me when I was that age. Like in socials and science, they do have, and even I'd say in the carpentry side of things or the woodwork side of things, they offer a lot more nowadays than they did when I was there. Like, I think there's a 3D printer and, you know, there's a class around that, which is pretty neat.
Aside from technology, it's the breadth of the subjects available that really stand out as different for Sarah's children. Social justice also seems to pervade the curricula. Her daughter Ella gives an idea of what she's done over the last 4 years.
I had a genocide class that I thought was super interesting. I took a law and psychology class, which are also super interesting. I'd say, like, I think they're all social studies classes, so those are probably my favorite. I started photography in grade 10, so I really started enjoying photography this year. And we ended up making like a magazine, which I was super proud of. Yeah, I'm gonna find my favorite one. So this one, I like this one because of all the colors. This one we have like a, I don't know if you can see, like a downtown section where we all went downtown and we took a lot of downtown photos of like buildings. I edited all the stuff in. Yeah, so that's probably my favorite part of photography is all the editing. I've learned a lot of good skills, I'd say, like from teachers that just like leadership skills, patience. I've been having meetings with the principal and we talk about like sexual assault. We got in the newspaper about it. I think that also has a big influence because I know that that's something that I'm really passionate about for in the future. Because they don't really talk about sexual assault or like toxic masculinity or consent really. Yeah, we've been doing a lot of stuff with the school for that. Yeah, I just say like communication, I learned a lot about that. I've always been like interested in psychology, but then once I took like the psychology class in grade 12, that's when I realized I was like, okay, like this is definitely something that I want to do as a future career. I've applied for Douglas for psychology. Graduating during COVID is so strange. It's kind of sad because like we don't get to have a prom. We have to do we have to book appointments to like walk across the stage. Like we can't really do it with our friends because we have like a time slot. And then we don't really get to do like all the grad activities that everyone else would get to do.
No photos of students all dressed up this year.
Saying goodbye, what do our participants have to say?
You know, in terms of goodbye to the old school, it really is unfortunate that it's COVID times because it would have been great to just host a huge goodbye bash to the building and really have a through the decades of what that high school has meant for many students, but also the community in general. But I'm really excited for the future of that space and how we memorialize where that building once was.
Architecturally, it's a bit of a boring thing. So when they put it together, they just physically joined the two structures and the offices were put in the middle. It never was particularly attractive. If I have any nostalgia for it, it's for the memories.
When I had first got there, like I couldn't understand like the Massey half and then the other half and like the room numbers. It was so easy to get lost in it. The new school, it's a lot easier to like find it because it's just like an L shape and then there's just floors.
A huge school, but such a great spirit. And we really all worked together. That was the one thing. It was that feeling of cooperation, that feeling of self-respect. And if someone had a problem, we'd all get together to solve it.
To me, it still seems a shame that they've torn it down when I realize obviously it's full of asbestos and all kinds of other things, but I'm sad for the fact that we weren't able to really sort of say goodbye or get a small piece of that history to take with us.
As I'm one who has dealt with history for a long time, you see a lot of things that disappear, and sometimes you wonder about should they have gone or not in terms of the building or site. In this case, it was getting old, very, very old, and needed to be changed. So that worked out very well. But you do have good feelings about it, you got good things to think about, and so those things come in. It's not so much a nostalgia to keep the structure, that you realize that there were good times connected with that structure.
It's like an old ratty sweatshirt that you put on and you just feel so comfortable, and lots of happy memories in that old building. And I think for me, coming from the position of a student, then a teacher, and my kids go there, I think that's why that ratty old sweatshirt feels so comfortable, and I miss it sometimes, even though I don't want to wear it out of the house.
I was born in 1949. That's the same year the school was built. So I don't know, a little coordination right there. I think that, and here I am, 72 years old now, so a long spread for that school to keep going.
It's an aging building. The students deserve a new state-of-the-art structure. I mean, the idea of trying to put the lightning wire and Wi-Fi through a terrible old building. I'm delighted to see the Massey as a standalone. I chaired the society years ago as we started the negotiations with the city and the school board to create that. So I'm very happy to see how that goes.
I hate to see anything demolished. I had to watch when they pushed Trap Tech down and Connaught schools down, which is very disappointing. But I guess progress is progress.
When you're first there, it's this massive place, and it's all, you're excited to be there. But when you see it changing and the upkeep's not there, they don't have the funding to do that and stuff. The school was tired. It was time to change. And as much as I hate to see the school come down, I know that they've got a great brand new building there. I know the auditorium, they've kept the auditorium, which I have a lot of fond memories of the auditorium, going to different plays and watching some of my friends in the plays there and stuff. So they've kept part of it, but yeah, it is sad. I mean, we had down by the Massey auditorium, or gymnasium, sorry, they had sort of a walk of all the memories of sports teams there, and I hope they've kept those. I know a lot of my friends that played basketball and football and lacrosse. There's stories there, and there's pictures of them. So I hope they've retained that. But it's sad, but it's like anything. You got to turn the page and move forward. And I think they've done a great job in doing that.
I would like to say a big thank you to New Westminster Secondary, to the staff and all the kids that I met through the years that I was there. It really enriched my life. I felt I was part of a wonderful big family, and there was a great dedication to excellent teaching. Now, I know with the new building and all the new staff that are going to be in there, that this is going to be a great place going into the future. And I want you to take all the richness from the past, musically, emotionally, educationally, and take it into the future with the new Westminster Secondary School. Good luck. Bonne chance.
Thanks everyone for watching. Thank you participants who gave this video life. Thank you NWSS committee members who caused this project to happen. And thank you to NewWest.tv for creating this video. Thanks also to our sponsors, NewWest.tv, Soma Television, the City of New Westminster, and others, listed in the credits. May you hold on to the good memories that you have of the old school to keep it alive for some time. A number of people provided written submissions about their memories. They can be found at www.newwest.tv/NWSS-stories. Take care, everyone.
We finish off with a student-made video, followed by the credits.